All right, guys. I'm excited to kind of talk to you guys again today. Um, we are going to be talking about deductions that come out of a paycheck. Last week, you'll remember that we talked about how to calculate an employee's gross pay. That's just strictly figuring out how much they're making per hour, figuring in overtime, and what they're making maybe monthly, weekly, so on and so forth. This week, we're going to talk about three different categories that could be deducted from an employee's paycheck. That's federal income tax, employee FICA tax, and voluntary deductions. These three deductions are the main three that always come out of somebody's paycheck. We're going to specifically just talk about federal income tax withholding today. With federal income tax withholding, there's also sometimes city or state income tax that's withheld as well. But since this book kind of deals with can be sent to Illinois, New York, Florida, they don't specifically go into each state and what's withheld for each one. Down at the bottom, it kind of talks about net pay, that gross pay or that number that we calculated last week, minus deductions or anything that's going to be taken out up here equals our net pay. That is also known as take-home pay. This is what the employee is physically getting in a check that they can spend on whatever they want to. So we're going to kind of dive into the income tax withholding. This is required by federal law. The employer has to take this out of your paycheck. If they don't and they're just giving you cash, they're kind of paying you under the table. The government wants their piece of the pie. So applied payment toward the payment of employees' federal income tax. The amount that's withheld from an employee's paycheck depends on a couple different factors. Number one, how much they're actually earning, their marital status, number of withholding allowances claimed, or the length of pay period. So let's kind of talk about these a little bit. Total earnings. The more money you make, the more that typically comes out. For marital status, you can sometimes get less taken out because it's a two-person household. Withholding allowances claimed. This could be if you have any dependents that rely on your income to survive. So maybe you're married to somebody that doesn't work, or you're married to somebody that makes less than you. You have kids. That's where you could have some withholding allowances claimed. You pick this number when you fill out a form when you first get hired on somewhere, and then the length of the pay period. So withholding allowances, we're just going to kind of go over that a little bit more. This exempt a specific dollar amount of an employee's gross pay from federal income tax withholding. Remember I said you'd fill out a form when you first get hired? That's your W-4. One thing that you need to remember, and this is just for you in general, when you fill out your W-4 form when you first get hired on, you really need to pay attention to detail. And also, if you get married or have kids, you really need to update that form as you go along, because it really is going to factor in how much money is being taken out of your paycheck. In general, each employee is permitted one personal withholding allowance, one for a spouse, and one for each dependent. So we're going to go ahead and do an example, and we're going to talk about Ken. He's married and claims 6 allowances. He has gross earnings of $545 for the week ending. We're going to figure out how much federal income tax is to be withheld using the wage bracket method. So with the wage bracket method, we need to have a graph that's going to kind of help us determine how much money is going to be taken out. There's no way that we can remember this. So on the post, there are 2 picture files that I gave you. These are from our textbook. It's a little bit hard to see. My suggestion is, because we're going to be using this quite often, have this saved in your file somewhere, maybe even print it out. If you have your textbook, that'd be great. But these are the 2 pages that I took a picture of. Up at the top, and it's kind of hard to see on this, but up here it kind of says married persons, and then on this one, that says married too. Well, there's one that's a single person by weekly payroll period. So single weekly, married weekly. We know he's married for the example, so we're looking at this one. I'm going to just kind of, zoom in, and I'm going to actually go back to the example here in a minute, but these two are going to extremely help you when you are doing examples in a little bit. So the very first thing that we're going to take from this is, let's let it load for a second. Sorry. Okay. We want the 545. That's an extremely important number. So this is just kind of a different copy of it on here so you can see it. We're going to look at these two columns first. The step one is find the row for the wages of at least 540, but less than 550. That terminology is extremely important because sometimes they're going to give you even numbers where it's 550, and you're going to have to decide, I need this one or I need this one. So it's at least 540, but less than 550. So we have found the row that we need to be in. We found the row. The next step that we need to do is find the column headed 6 withholding allowances. Remember back in that example, he could claim 6 allowances. So we have found our column of 6, and we kind of see where those two meet, and we see that he is going to have $1 taken out for his taxes. So $1. That's kind of where we're going to stop today. I want to make sure that we really understand this, that we've had time to figure out the gross pay, and then how to actually look at these examples and find out how much is going to be withheld for allowances. So on this post, you have this tutorial. You have the 2 picture files, that one's for married and one is for single for weekly pay periods. And then you're also going to have a form that you need to fill out. And that's just kind of giving you examples of if a person's married or single, how much they're making weekly, and how many allowances. And you're going to need to figure out how much money is going to be withheld. So I'll kind of check back in with you here in a couple days, guys, and then we'll go from there.